And good evening, and welcome back to a Blaze Apostolic Ministry International, bringing light to a darkening world, impacting lives and impacting communities. A ministry that seeks to impact, the lives of believers and unbelievers, and thus enable them to further impact their communities and the lives of others. At a Blaze, we believe wholeheartedly in Leviticus chapter 6 and verse 13, the fire shall ever be burning upon the altar, and it shall never go out. It is good to be with you this evening on another Sunday evening broadcast. We had taken a break, and I want to let you know that our Faith Booster broadcasts will recommence next Sunday as well. So you could look forward to a powerful time in the presence of Almighty God, where our faith boosters are concerned. But this evening, at a Blaze, we care also about your natural health. We're not only about your spiritual well being, but we care also about your natural health. And therefore, in this session this evening, we're looking at taking control of your health with Miss Leanda Hurdle. Glory be to God in the name of Jesus. And we want you to understand that this session and its content is strictly for informational or educational purposes only and does not intend to treat, diagnose, or substitute for professional medical advice. Hallelujah. You are therefore advised to consult a medical professional or healthcare provider if you are seeking medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for any health related matters and conditions. Hallelujah, Jesus. And we're looking forward to a very informative evening with Miss Leanda Hurdle. So, without any further ado, we're going to take a break at this time. And welcome back. I want to extend a warm welcome to those of you already on with us this evening. And indeed, we commit this time into the hands of Almighty God, and we pray that His Holy Spirit will indeed bless it for His honor and glory. So we say good evening to Miss Leanda Hurdle. Good evening, Leanda.
Good evening, Reverend Ford. Good evening to our audience.
Good to have you with us this evening for the honor and glory of God. It's been, let's say, every since I had entered pastoral ministry, God has blessed me with the necessary wisdom of going after certain information, because one of the things that I believe as a pastor at that time, and indeed I see myself still as a minister of religion, I believe that it was absolutely important to be able to impart knowledge to persons outside of the realm of just spiritual knowledge. And therefore I've taken a vested interest in educating myself in certain areas of well, I'm not a doctor. I'm always careful when I share stuff with persons to say to them, I'm not a doctor. Glory be to God. But God has blessed me with enough wisdom to know certain things. Amen. And therefore, I always believe in my spirit that we need more than just spiritual information. The Bible says that people perish for lack of knowledge, and therefore it is a Blaze's intention to make sure, whether it is medical, whether it is financial, whatever the case is, that over the period of our existence, that we will be sharing educational information while at the same time building people up spiritually in the word of God. So with that being said, we I want to again thank Miss Leanda for being with us this evening, and therefore without any further ado, we're going to launch right into our presentation this evening. Thanks again for those who are with us, and indeed encourage someone else to join us. You don't know who you are going to help. As I said, we are not here to treat or diagnose any medical conditions or matters, but indeed you will go away from this session more informed, I believe, in some areas. So Miss Leander, you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Reverend Ford. As I said earlier, good evening to everyone listening, viewing. So I have the pleasure and the honor this evening to present on the topic of taking care of your health. So I'm a registered nutritionist, and pretty much this is what I do generally every day, every week, is provide nutrition counsel to patients and to clients alike. All right, so our topic is taking care of your health, and we're looking at how your dietary habits may actually be harming you without you even being aware of it. And these things are quite important to make a note of. All right, so our goals this evening, hopefully, we want to go through how nutrition affects our bodies, whether negatively or positively. We also want to look at the food nutrients and the food groups, and this is really the basics of nutrition. It's important to understand your nutrients and your food groups, and then looking at specifically nutrients in excess, because if we're honest with ourselves, we do consume some nutrients in excess, and this is where a lot of our health conditions may stem. And then
Mhm.
also the impact of these dietary habits upon health. And then lastly, looking at just a few tips, take home tips for you to help you eat more nutrient rich foods. All right. So our first main slide here speaks of nutrient rich food and the impact on the body. So I think this is really important that we preface with this slide. It says here that food is a solid. So food is any solid or liquid that you take into the body with the aim of maintaining life and assisting with the body's functions. Though we may not see, we only look at the outward appearance, there are many systems and organs within our body that require food to sustain them and for them to operate optimally. So it's the nutrients specifically in these foods that are important. So we just look at substances as food, it's food we eat, but we don't often see that there are nutrients that make up this food. And these nutrients are actually what are responsible for the maintenance and nourishment and the proper functioning of the body. So the body is made up of billions of cells. Of course, we can't see our individual cells, but trust me, we are made up of billions of cells. And these cells are the real building blocks, the simple units of our body. And many cells make tissues. So sometimes we hear people talk about the heart tissue and the tissues of the lungs and tissues of other organs. So many tissues make up organs, and then these organs make up systems. So you might hear of things like the digestive system. The digestive system is made up of many various organs, and each of these organs have their tissues, and these tissues have their cells. So the body's organs, the body's systems, the body's functions, they all depend on cells that are nourished. And where do we get the nourishment from? We get the nourishment from our food. And so it's so vital that we pay more attention and we be more intentional about what we're actually eating. So if you take a piece of sponge, nobody in their right mind is going to sit and eat a piece of sponge because there's nothing in there that's going to maintain life or aid in proper bodily functions. It probably will do the opposite and cause death. Right? So it's similar to a car. If you're going to fuel a car, you're not going to put water, even though water is a substance of some kind, it's a liquid, it is not gasoline. You can't put it in the car because it's not going to run the car. The car is not going to function. Likewise, our bodies are machines that need the right type of fuel. And so we need to put nutrient rich foods into our bodies so that at the cellular level, the most minute level, our cells are nourished so that the body, as a result, is nourished. So poor nutrition is really resulting from the foods that we eat, eating the wrong foods. And ultimately, these are foods that are ultra processed. All right. So when you think of ultra processed foods, I often help people understand what ultra processed foods are by looking at the food that is ultra processed and then thinking about the food that it came from or it was derived from or made from. So, for example, let's say we took something um, like hot dogs, for example, and maybe they're chicken hot dogs. Those chicken hot dogs would have been made ultimately from chicken. So chicken would be the whole food. If you look at chicken, you compare it to a chicken hot dog, we know it doesn't look the same, doesn't smell the same, doesn't taste the same. The texture is different. So we know in such a situation that this food is ultra processed. And the ultra processed foods, by their virtue, they are stripped of fiber, vitamins, and minerals. So every time we process a food, when we take wheat or we take rice and we process it down to get flour, we are stripping it of the fiber, the vitamins, and the minerals that the food has. And then also on top of that, these foods then are high in sugar, fat, and salt, and also other additives. So these additives may be there to enhance color, enhance taste, increase shelf life, change the texture to get a desired texture. And some of these additives are not always the best for our bodies. But when we eat food, we don't think about food that way. We think of it as something that tastes good. I like it. It's my favorite food. It's convenient. It's cheap. It's easy to access. But one of the questions now you would need to ask yourself is there sufficient nourishment in this food or sufficient nutrients in these foods that will give my cells, the body at its most minute cellular level, is it going to give these cells adequate nutrition or nourishment? So everything we eat impacts health. Everything we eat impacts our health. Okay, so foods can either promote health, where you are giving the cells all that they need, or they can stress the cells out. So foods can either be healthful or stressful. And then we may go to a doctor because we've been experiencing a headache, or we may be experiencing high blood pressure, or we might have a rash or swelling, poor circulation. These symptoms, these signs, these diseases all stem from what is happening at the level of our cells. The several cells in the body have been impacted. So then when we see something happening through, symptoms or diseases, it's really that something has started first at the cellular level. Okay. And that is important to remember. So let's quickly looking at some of the ways that poor nutrition can affect your health. And many of us kind of know these things off the top of our heads, right? So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it's important to know that if you overeat, if you overconsume food, even of the healthy things, it can lead to obesity and weight gain. So poor nutrition is not just, because most people think in their minds that poor nutrition is starvation, lack of food, but it's also overeating, which then leads to obesity and overweight, which puts pressure on your lungs and your heart. So this also has effects on your cells and your organs, ultimately. Tooth decay, high blood pressure, too much salt, high cholesterol, too much sugar, and too much fat. This then can lead to things like heart disease and stroke, type 2 diabetes, too much sugar, osteoporosis, a lack of calcium. So you see all these things are stemming from foods and nutrients that we may be consuming. Osteoporosis is really what you call weakening of the bones. So the bone density is decreased. Okay. Some cancers are linked to what we're eating. What's happening at the cellular level when a cancer is diagnosed or detected, it is not that it became a lump or tumor overnight. It started from cells. So again, at the cellular level, there was an impact, possibly based on nutrition, other factors as well, but nutrition may have a role to play as well. And then there is the mental wellness. So poor nutrition can affect your mental wellness. It can affect the way you eat, your disorders. Some people who have disorders like bulimia, anorexia, and this obviously can impact, or this is because of poor nutrition, lack of eating. And then your energy levels. So if you don't eat properly, if you don't eat enough, if you skip meals, if you are constantly not eating well, it affects your energy levels. And of course, if your energy levels are impacted, it affects your capacity to work. If you're doing a manual job, it affects your ability to work. If you're concentrating and even using a lot of mental capacity, it's going to affect you. And this ultimately leads to how active, how enjoyable your life is, and generally the quality of life. So basic activities that we conduct on a daily basis can be affected by what we eat. And so this is so important, that we eat proper foods, the right foods, nutrient-rich foods. So you would have heard me mention about nutrients and constantly using the term nutrients. And you may be saying, but how do I get these nutrients? What are these nutrients even? I don't know what they are. So this slide, we're going to spend a few minutes on this slide to look at what the nutrients are. Okay. So the first three nutrients, carbohydrate, protein, and fat, these are what we call the macronutrients, meaning that the body needs these in larger amounts than the other nutrients that follow. However, many of us are eating them in excess. We're not eating them in adequacy. We're not eating adequate amounts, but we're eating in abundance, too much, in excess. So I thought it would be nice to just, mention what is the role of each of these nutrients so that we understand why it's important to get in all of them and not just the first three. So carbohydrate is the first macronutrient, the first nutrient that is required in large amounts. Okay. So carbohydrate is an energy source. Every cell, so now we're going back to the cells again. Every cell in the body requires carbohydrate. It's a key source of energy. It fuels the cells, it fuels the brain. The brain requires carbohydrate. And that's why sometimes if we don't eat for long periods, we start to get a headache, right? So carbohydrates are important. They're the go foods. They provide energy. And then we have the proteins. So the proteins are also another source of energy. They're also another energy group. And these also are important for muscles. So if you've been involved in going to a gym or working out, or you're even into bodybuilding or some type of elite training, you know how important protein is, right? So protein is very important for supporting muscle, for maintaining muscle mass, and for muscles to repair and to develop and grow. Proteins are also important for our internal organs. And well, again, we don't see our internal organs. They're there, and they need the support of adequate protein in the body, adequate protein foods. Okay. And we're going to talk about what these foods are shortly. And then proteins also help with our antibodies. So when we have sickness, we have these antibodies that help the body fight disease. So proteins are an important part of the immune system as well as our skin. So proteins are pretty vital. And then we have fat. Fat is another energy source as well. So we have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, which are all energy sources. And your fats are important because, sometimes as nutrition professionals, when we speak about fat, it can give persons the impression that all fat is bad. Fat is not good. I shouldn't have it in my diet. But fat is a very important part of all of our cells. So going back again to the cellular level, every cell in our body has fat, has cholesterol as part of the structure of the cell. And if it doesn't have that, it's going to also impact the function of the cell. So fat is important for coating our organs to ensure that they are protected from shock and from damage. There's also a layer of fat under our skin. So fat keeps us warm. It's an insulation. All right. So fat also helps certain vitamins to be absorbed in the body better, which we call the fat soluble vitamins. These are vitamins A, D, E, and K. All right. So fat has numerous functions. It's important for joint health, heart health, and brain development and function. So fat is pretty important. And then we have the vitamins that most of us don't think much about. We don't give a lot of consideration to these foods. And sometimes our diets are depleted of the vitamins and the minerals and the fiber, and even sometimes water. So if you think about vitamins, there are many vitamins. So you have vitamin A, B, C, D, E, K. There's many vitamins. And these vitamins have various functions. So while vitamin A is important for eye health and skin health and immune function, the B vitamins are important for nerves. So if any of you have ever had nerve damage or nerve inflammation of nerves or sciatica issues, the doctor might have prescribed some type of B vitamin for you. All right, the B vitamins also help with utilization of energy from the same carbohydrate foods. All right, B vitamins are also important for building blood as well, so blood health. And then we have vitamin C, which everybody knows is good for immune function, but also for the skin as well and wound healing. When we get cuts and wounds to help them heal. We got vitamin E, which is important for the skin and it has other functions as well. And vitamin K, which is the clotting vitamin. So we're seeing now how important vitamins are. And like I said, they have a wide variety of functions. If you look at vitamin D is what we call the sunshine vitamin. We should be getting majority of it from the sun. And this helps our calcium to be better absorbed to support our bone health. Vitamin D is also very important for the immune system as well. And then there are a variety of vitamins. Now, some of the vitamins are needed, some of the minerals are needed in larger amounts than others. All right. We call those ones that are needed in smaller amounts trace minerals. And you may not hear a lot about things like selenium or manganese or boron and copper, but they are all important. All of your minerals are important for digestive health. The enzymes that break down our food and help us digest our food are made up of minerals. So minerals are very important to our digestive system and also other systems in the body. If you think about minerals like iron, helps to build blood. If anybody has ever been anemic, you know the repercussions of being deficient in iron. If you're deficient in calcium, it affects your teeth and your bones. That's another mineral, calcium. If you got too much salt, that can cause problems. Or sodium, that's another mineral. So there are many minerals, and we can't obviously go through all of them, but know that your minerals are very, very important. And deficiencies can cause a lot of problems. And then there's fiber. So fiber is important for good bowel movement and a healthy colon. Fiber helps to push the food along the digestive tract so that it is eliminated at the rate that it's supposed to be eliminated, so that we are having regular bowel movements. Fiber is also important for controlling blood sugar and blood cholesterol. And then lastly, we have water. Water, we often hear the catchphrase, well, 60-70% of our bodies are made up of fluid, which is actually true. So we need, obviously, when we lose water through urination and perspiration, and even speaking, as I'm speaking to you, I'm losing water, right? So the mouth can get dry. And so water, the only way we can replace it is by drinking it. Okay, and so water transports nutrients all around the body. It also helps with bowel movements. It helps to eliminate toxins from the body and the waste and so on. So it also helps to keep the body cool. If you've ever been hot, you will say, let me get a drink of water to cool down. So we've seen there are 7 nutrients. And if you tend to forget, remember there's 7 days in a week. So there's 7 nutrients. So you may be thinking, well, geez, she just said a whole lot. All these nutrients, how on earth do I know that I am getting all of these nutrients? Well, one way is to eat a balanced diet. All right. So a balanced diet means that you're getting all of those nutrients in the right amounts. But then another question may come. How do I know I'm getting these nutrients in the right amounts? Sorry, seem to be right. There you go. So we have the 6 food groups, 6 Caribbean food groups. We're going to look at these a bit closely. But know that it is not sufficient to have nutrients, but have them in deficiency. You need to have all of the nutrients in the right amounts. Okay. So by having your 6 food groups, having foods from each of these food groups every day, you're almost able to guarantee that you're getting all of those nutrients that I just went through and more, all of your nutrients in the right amounts. If we're honest with ourselves, some of us don't eat fruits for several days. Sometimes a week goes by, we don't eat fruits or vegetables. Okay, and this is not good because as we will go through these food groups, you will kind of see, where we get these various nutrients from. So these 6 food groups are classifications or groups of foods based on the key nutrients that they contribute to the diet. So you may not know a lot about nutrition or about food groups, but you would know, most people know you won't put something like fish in the same food group as an orange. They look completely different, right? So they go into their separate food groups. So the first food group here is the staples. So staples are what we consider or call the starchy foods. Those foods high in starches. Most of us are eating too many starches, right? Too many starches are in our diet. So we're not getting the balance because we're over consuming now with our starches. So we talked earlier about carbohydrates. So the carbohydrate nutrient we would find in this food group mostly, right? So staples offer carbohydrates. And what are these staples? So your ground provisions. Your ground provisions are starchy. They offer carbohydrate. Oats, biscuits, bread, green bananas, plantains, rice and pasta and flour, and all of your flour-based products like bakes and dumplings and um, pancakes and fish cakes. These are all your starchy foods. Even cornmeal. So cornmeal comes from corn. So corn is also a starchy vegetable. Most people put it as a starchy vegetable, but because it's so high in starch, we have to put it in this food group of staples. So from cornmeal, we get cocoa and we get cornmeal pap. So they would all fall under the staples, right? So those are our staples. And so from here, we get carbohydrates and we also get some of the B vitamins that we talked about earlier. We can also get fiber. And that is why it's so important to have your staples in natural farms, right? So rather than just having white bread, have whole wheat bread. Rather than having a cream of wheat, have oats. So these more natural forms of food you're getting in your ground provisions and plantains and so on will ensure that you're getting the fiber that is very, very important because as we know, fiber is also another important nutrient. All right, so let's move on from the staples now, because we know what nutrients mainly we get from staples. Let's look at the legumes. So the legumes is the second food group. The legumes are our peas, beans, and nuts. So all your variety of nuts come under here. And from nuts, you get peanut butter, or you may get almond butter or hazelnut butter. So they all fall under this food group. And then your peas, so lentils, black-eyed peas, chickpeas, kidney beans, Bonavis, green peas, baked beans, they all fall under this category. So what nutrients do you get from legumes? You get protein, and this is a very important food group for people who don't eat meat and fish or vegans. They can get their proteins from the legumes. You can also get carbohydrates again from your legumes, also fiber, calcium, iron. So this is a beautiful food group, but oftentimes it is overlooked. And many days, weeks can go by without us having any type of pea or bean or nut. So it's important that we get in the legumes because it has a wide variety of nutrients. Foods from animals, our third food group. So this is one of the favorite food groups of many Bajans. We like our meat and our fish. We may eat eggs, cheese, milk, yogurt. All of these come from animal sources. Even our tinned fish and our tinned meat, so sardines and corned beef and luncheon meat, they all fall under this food group. In this food group, you get protein. Protein is the nutrient that comes from the foods from animals. You can also get fat, not the best type of fat. So it's always good to trim the fat off the meat as much as possible. In this food group, you also get some iron, you get some calcium. If you use the bones of your sardines, you get the calcium from the bone of the sardine or the mackerel, not the mackerel or the sardine itself, but from the bones. So when you are making your sardine paste, please retain the bones and use them for that additional calcium. All right, and so the other minerals you get from these is this food group as well, things like phosphorus and so on. All right, so let's move on to the fruits and the vegetables. So those are the next two food groups. So the fruits are loaded with fiber, which we know is great for if you know bowel movements. Fruits are also naturally high in sugars. So sugars will be a form of carbohydrate. So fruits have carbohydrates. They also have vitamins, so vitamin C. Your orange and yellow fruits have vitamin A. Most of the fruits actually have vitamin B1 and B2. So you're saying that these fruits are pretty important because they have a variety of vitamins and minerals and fiber. And then we have the vegetables, which have a similar nutritional value to the fruits. All right. So the idea is that with your fruits and vegetables, you want to get a variety of colors because the various colors mean that they have slightly different nutritional value. So if all you eat is watermelon, that's only red, but you need some orange fruit, you need some yellow fruit, you need some green colored fruit. So you want to have a variety of fruits and vegetables in terms of color, and getting the rainbow of colors when it comes to your vegetables and fruits. Remember that they have a lot of fiber in them, both vegetables and fruits. And vegetables are low in sugar, so a wonderful food group to use. And then lastly, we have the fats and the oils. And you will notice that this sector of the circle is pretty tiny. As the name suggests, the fats and oils are very high in fat. And because of that, we have to use these foods in moderation, small amounts, hence the tiny part of the circle that these are responsible for. So you can have the more natural fats like our local pear, the avocado, that is high in fat. Most people are not aware of that. The Jamaican ackee, olives, and coconuts. These are all natural high fat foods, the good types of fats. Also, seeds like linseed and pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds, flax seeds, they all fall under this group as well. And you get things like vitamin E and so on from these. And then there are the more processed fats and oils. So these are things like butter, margarine, mayonnaise, cream cheese, salad dressings, and so on. So the idea really for me going through this is for you to understand what the food groups are, the importance of getting in foods from each of these food groups every day. So I underscore every day, because it is not enough to get them in, you know, once a week, but every day in order to have adequate nutrition. So a nutritious diet will be one that has foods from each of these food groups every day.
Mhm. Well, Sister Leanda, we're going to take a break at this time,
Sure.
and we're going to come right back. And we are back. I just want to share quickly Miss Hurdle's bio with you before we continue, and then I just have one or two questions before we move on. But Miss Leanda Hurdle is a registered nutritionist with over 10 years experience in health, wellness, and nutrition. She is a community nutrition officer in the Ministry of Health and Wellness with the National Nutrition Center. Miss Hurdle also practices privately. Can I repeat that again? Miss Hurdle also practices privately and offers nutrition counseling and health and nutrition programs to individuals. She serves as a consultant nutritionist at the Barbados Heart and Stroke Foundation for two weight loss programs. She also gained invaluable experience in the food industry and in the areas of fitness, lifestyle change, and substance misuse in Barbados and the UK. She holds a master's degree in human nutrition with merit from the University of Glasgow, Scotland. And during this degree, she completed her specialisation in obesity and weight management. Following her studies, Leanda gained invaluable experience for over a year working as a health advisor for the UK National Health Service, supporting and providing specialist advice to individuals. In this role, she was trained in lifestyle change, substance misuse, and sexual health, with behavioral change incorporated as the key tool. When not working, she enjoys a good read, a good movie, a good dance, good company, and a good laugh. Praise God. Praise God. Before we continue, Leanda, you mentioned a few things that I wanted for you to share a little bit more concerning
Sure.
the danger of skipping meals. Some
Hmm.
people believe that. Some people have this strange belief that if they don't eat at all, that somehow that is good for them. And I'm not talking here now about purposeful fasting. I'm not talking about fasting. I'm talking about those persons, and I know these are the type of people that you're talking about as well, who just decide, I'm not going to eat lunch, or I'm not going to eat lunch and dinner or whatever, because they think that there is some additional health benefit to that. I would want for you to share, uh, what is the danger of skipping meals in that manner?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And thank you so much for the question, Reverend Ford. So, you made a very good point there that there's a major difference between purposeful fasting and just fasting because of some strange notion.
Mm-hmm.
So, purposeful fasting, we know has its benefits, um, but just skipping meals can be detrimental, particularly for diabetics. Want to start with that, because as a diabetic, if you're skipping meals, blood sugars can dip low, and when blood sugars dip low, the body notices that that's going to happen and understands what can result, which is you can go into a diabetic coma. And the body has a more or less a backup mechanism for that. So it will tap into the liver, and the liver has got stores of glucose in there called glycogen. So it converts that glycogen to glucose and sends it out into the bloodstream. So ultimately, what you have there is fluctuations in blood sugars. It dips really low, which is never a good thing. And then when that store of glucose is sent out into the bloodstream, then it spikes. It's never a good idea for blood sugars to be spiking and dropping low, because every time it spikes, that means levels are high in the blood, and that causes damage to blood vessels. And that is one of the reasons why persons may develop atherosclerosis, or fatty plaque on the inside of the arteries, because the inside of the arteries are damaged, and the cholesterol now goes in there and tries to patch that damage, and you get that plaque building up over time, which is partly cholesterol. The other thing too to skipping meals is that some people think it will help them lose weight, but sometimes the opposite does happen. So it's not just for persons who are trying to control blood sugar, but for persons who want to control weight. It's never a good idea to skip meals, because if you do that on a regular basis, the body sees that as a crisis. And I'll use the analogy of, we're in a season now of the stormy season. We're a little more likely to get hurricanes. So when we hear that there's a disaster approaching, what do Bajans do, or what are we encouraged to do? Go to the supermarket and stock up on certain items. And so when we are skipping meals habitually like this, your body notices that routine, and it realizes that, you know what, Leanne is not eating properly. So when she does eat, she seems to be going through a disaster. So when she does eat, I'm going to take all that food and store up, because she doesn't seem to eat well. We don't know when the next meal is going to come. So it
Mm-hmm.
tends to slow down the metabolism, and the food start being stored. So rather than losing weight, you tend to gain weight. Also, when you skip meals, it means that when you do eat the next time, you're so ravenously hungry that you end up overeating.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some of the dangers. So it impacts blood sugars, it impacts weight.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And then the facts.
Mm-hmm,
for so many for so many years, and I thank God for allowing me to go through some experiences over the past 2 years or so. But there was a time when facts was seen as that loaded gun, that enemy that you had to avoid at all costs.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
as a result, that has also been detrimental to some people as well. Amen. And I think
Mm.
you have already noted some of the reasoning why our bodies need fat. And therefore I want you to re-emphasize why
Mm-hmm.
it is necessary that your meals have that element of fat in there.
Right. So as I would have mentioned earlier, fat is not in all a bad thing. There are, and I will mention this in another slide, so I'm kind of prefacing what I'm going to mention a little bit later, but not all is fat. Not all fat is bad. Not all fat is created equal.
Mm-hmm.
So it is just about knowing the healthy versus the unhealthy, and choosing more of the healthy fats. As we know that fats have their role in the body, like I mentioned earlier. We need fat. Every cell in the body requires fat. Some I know in the 90s, early 2000s, I think the world went through this crazy period where, like you were alluding to just now, fat was so horrible. So
Mm-hmm.
everything was low fat this and low fat that. And while there's some credibility to it, and we want persons to not consume fat in excess, the
Mm-hmm.
dangers of consuming fat in deficiency or trying to eliminate it is that it can cause things like simple things like headaches because your brain cells need the fat, right? It can also, some of these products can be low in fat, but the detriment is that in order to make the things still taste good and be palatable, it
Mm-hmm.
is then high in sugar. And I'll take yogurt, for example. So you have a low fat yogurt, for example. The low fat yogurt obviously has little or no fat, but then they add so much sugar to it to
Mm-hmm.
make it still taste good. So then while you're trying to lower your fat intake, you may be increasing your sugar intake at the detriment of your body. All right. So it's never a good thing to starve the body of important nutrients, and fat is included. It just really depends on the type of fat that you're going to use and how often you can use it. Because fat is like a squeegee. You don't have a good detergent at home and using in your dishes. You don't need a lot. A little goes a long
Mm-hmm.
way. So that's basically how fat is. It's very condensed in calories. So you don't
Yeah,
need to
that.
put on it. But at the other extreme, you don't want to not have any at all.
Mm-hmm. And then starches. It is normal. I've been to events already, and sometimes like say you're on a cruise, and you see somebody with a plate of food that if the ship had to lean a little bit, much of that food would fall off. And we can agree that in most cases that plate is loaded with starches. You're gonna have your rice, your macaroni pie, then you may have potato salad, macaroni salad, and so on. Um, in essence, what are you doing to your body in a case like that?
So you're running ahead of my presentation.
Well, if you're going to address that, we'll skip that one.
Yeah,
You
I am
you
going to cover that
mentioned
in another slide or two.
good, wonderful, wonderful, and then water.
Hmm.
Water. If you're going to cover that, we can move on.
Oh, we can talk about
Um,
that now. You can cover the
yeah,
water
but
now.
water, you often hear people say water doesn't have any taste, and
Hmm.
therefore there's this dislike for water
Hmm.
where a lot of people are concerned. Why
Hmm.
is it important that we do consume water?
Right. So, as I would have mentioned earlier, a large percentage of our body is water. Now, I'm going back to the cellular level again, because if we don't understand what's happening at the cellular level, I don't think we're going to appreciate some things when symptoms happen, that it's something more underlying. There's a root source or a root cause.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, our bodies are made of billions of cells. Inside each cell, there's fluid, there's water. And
Mm-hmm.
outside of the individual cells, there's water. So there's water outside the cells. So the cells are all kind of floating in this fluid like environment. And then inside the cells, there's also fluid or water in there as well. So it means that if every day we're perspiring, we may not think we're perspiring, but we're perspiring. Every time we speak, we're losing water in the form of vapor. Every time we urinate or we have a bowel movement, we're losing fluid from the body. The only way to put it back in is through the mouth, is through water. Water is the best form of hydration. Now, if you're not hydrating yourself, and I've known of people who've been hospitalized, very unwell, all these strange symptoms, nobody can figure out what's wrong with them. You know what the doctor eventually said? They were dehydrated. So dehydrated can have some serious repercussions. It can lead to things like urinary tract infections. I'm not saying that every time somebody gets a urinary tract infection is because they're dehydrated, but you may want to address your fluid intake. All right. It can cause confusion, foggy memory, dry skin, dry mouth, bad breath. So all these things are some of the repercussions, fatigue of not getting enough fluid. If
Mm-hmm.
persons are having issues with their fluid intake or water intake, you can flavor your water, right? So you can squeeze a little lime in there. If that's too acidic, some orange. You can even these bottles you can buy now, which actually can to infuse your fruits. So you can use like berries or mango or banana and infuse it into the water and get the flavor coming out into your water. You can use cinnamon. Some people use cinnamon, ginger, mint leaves, cucumber. So chilling your water and flavoring it, finding a variety of ways to flavor it, can also help you get enough fluid in. And I hope that answered the question that you would have
Hmm.
asked.
Yes it does. Yes it does. And I pray and I trust that persons that are not only on live with us this evening, but
Yes.
persons that will watch this over time would understand the importance for water in their day-to-day lives. Amen. So at this time, Leanda, I'm going to ask you to continue, and let's get your well.
Sure.
Wonderful.
Great.
Hmm.
So we paused at a good slide. And I must say thanks for your questions as well. So we're on now to the nutrients in excess. So we covered the basics of nutrition, understanding what the nutrients are and what food groups we can find them in. And the idea, as I said, is to get a balanced diet by getting foods from each of the food groups every day, not just every week, but every day. So nutrients in excess. Now, this is where the problems come. We know that carbohydrates are important for health. I just mentioned that. We know that fats are important to health. We just spoke about that. Also, sodium is important to health, or salt. The problem comes when we're using these nutrients in excess. And therefore, these nutrients are of concern to public health, to the medical fraternity, to the nutrition professionals, because all across the world, people are using these nutrients in excess. So we're going to look at each of these nutrients, and we're going to look at what do these look like in terms of food items, and then some of the habits that we can have that can increase our intake of these nutrients and cause excess intake. So let's look at carbohydrates. So we know what carbohydrates are. We know the role of carbohydrates. We know that carbohydrates are important to health. We know that carbohydrates we can get from food groups like fruits, staples, and legumes. So let's look at what these foods are a little bit more in detail, because especially if you're a diabetic, it's important to understand what are your carbohydrates so that you can better control your blood sugars. Now, again, I want to go back to the cellular level. When we have too much carbohydrate, now the carbohydrates, the body breaks down or digests our carbohydrates to sugar, whether it is a starch or it's a sugar. Carbohydrates are starches and sugars. So any foods or drinks that have starch or sugar are considered carbohydrate foods and drinks. And the body breaks down carbohydrates. Doesn't matter your age, who you are, all of our carbohydrates are digested or broken down to glucose or sugar. And where does that glucose go when it's absorbed? It moves from the intestines, where it's broken down to, into the bloodstream, and the blood takes it all around the body because every cell in the body requires this glucose. The problem comes when we use the carbohydrates in excess. It means that more glucose now is moving around through the blood. That excess glucose damages blood cells. So if you're diabetic and you're finding it hard to manage your blood sugars, it is likely that damage is occurring to your blood vessels. And if those blood vessels lead to major organs, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get kidney problems. You're going to get brain issues, forgetfulness, deterioration of the brain. It's going to also cause plaque to build up. So uncontrolled diabetes can now lead to heart disease. So it is as serious as that. So the important thing is to understand that your sugar is supposed to move from your blood into your cells. If there's too much of it and it can't get into the cells, it's going to build up in the blood. That accumulation then leads to diabetes. And so again, we're seeing how carbohydrates impact you at a cellular level. So the staples are, these foods we mentioned before: bread, biscuits, your breakfast cereals you buy in the supermarket, cornmeal, cornmeal pack, cocoa, pasta, rice, ground provisions, and pasta and plantain. When I usually include ground provisions, many people are surprised that ground provisions are starchy, but ground provisions are quite starchy. And I find this is an issue with older folk because they think, well, I'm not eating bad foods, I'm not eating unhealthy foods. And truly they're not, but they may be eating large portions of carbohydrate of ground provision because they like breadfruit or they like sweet potato and their plate is full of these foods. They like stew food. So then that can also become a problem. Legumes, Dried peas and beans. While these foods are rich in nutrition, they're powerhouses in terms of nutrition, you still need to respect that they have carbohydrates in them. Okay? Nuts as well. Fruits are naturally sweet. They're high in sugars. And so you can't just sit and eat a big bowl of fruit because fruit is good for you. And I'm going to talk about this in another slide. Milk and dairy. So milk has a type of sugar in it called lactose. Lactose is what we call milk sugar. Now, the only way your milk is not going to have lactose is if it's lactose free. Otherwise, all milk, including low-fat milk, is going to have lactose, as well as yogurt. And we touched on the yogurt and how sweet the yogurt can be as well. All right. And then the naughty things, the sugary, sweet things that we just love to indulge in. The natural juices, the fruit juices, the box juices, the soft drinks, sweet bread, cakes, cookies, ice cream, honey, even honey, and agave. So I know some people use this agave as an alternative to sugar, but it's also high in sugar. And persons need to realize that when you're using this in place of sugar, it can still spike their blood sugar levels. And that is very important to know. So let's look at some of the common food habits that we may be practicing possibly on a daily level, daily basis, maybe throughout each day, that may be leading to excess carbohydrate intake. So as I would have mentioned earlier, too much carbohydrate can lead to weight problems, controlling weight, as well as controlling blood sugars. So large portions, so this is one of the habits that some of us have, especially older folk, large portions of ground provisions because they're deemed as healthier. I'm not saying they're not healthier. I'm just saying that because we believe they're healthier or because they are healthier, we end up eating large portions. So you sit to have something like breadfruit cacao or soup or stew food. You got a piece of cassava, you got a piece of sweet potato, you got breadfruit, you got English potato. And by the time you're done, your plate is packed with ground provision. And then you come to the doctor or the nutritionist trying to figure out, why is my blood sugar elevated? I didn't eat bad foods. I'm not even putting sugar in my tea, but yet my blood sugars are extremely high. Why is it? Maybe you want to relook how your plate looks. Maybe you want to cut back on the ground provisions. So while we know that things like rice and pasta can elevate blood sugars, ground provisions are also high in starch, and the body breaks down that starch to sugar. So every time you heap your plate with ground provisions, even though they are more natural and they have more fiber than some of the other staples, they are still high in starch. So you want to be careful that eating large amounts of these are not impacting your blood sugars. And not only that, your weight. So even eating the right types of foods, like ground provisions, can cause you to, or can contribute to weight gain. Again, you may not be thinking you're eating high calorie foods, but the more calories if you have a fistful of food and then you have two fistfuls of food, it's only obvious that two fistfuls of food is going to be more than one. So the more you eat, the more it tends to contribute to weight gain or not being able to lose the weight at the desired rate that you would want. All right, so those are the ground provisions. I am not saying don't eat ground provisions. They're healthy. I ate some up to today, but it's the portion size. You must control your portion size, okay? The next thing we do is that we have more than one staple food at meal times. So before I'm getting to what you would have asked earlier, some of the times that this can happen is for breakfast or Sunday lunch. Many of us know what our Sunday lunch looks like. Or if we go to a buffet, there is a wide spread of foods. And like Reverend Ford was saying, you may have macaroni pie, rice and peas, sweet potato pie, yam pie, all kinds of pies that are starchy. And we haven't even started talking about the salads because we deem potato salad and macaroni salad as salads. They don't have any vegetables, but they are starches because pasta, macaroni is starch, and potato is starch. So by the time you are done, you've gone to your buffet. And buffets might not necessarily be so bad because a buffet, we don't go to a buffet every day. So I don't even consider the buffet moments too bad. But it's when these things are we are practicing these habits regularly. So like breakfast time and Sunday lunch every week, our Sunday plate is packed with starches. We may have rice and peas and pie or sweet potato pie or corn pie. And then we have plantain. Plantain is high in starch. Plantain is also sweet. We may have corn on the side. Corn is also high in starch. So you have now had a plate packed. And then we look to see where the vegetables are. A bare bit of vegetables just scotch onto the side of the plate or maybe sprinkled on top of the rest of the food. So we have to be careful that the practices, the dietary or the food practices that we are encouraging on a daily basis are not costing us our health, are not impacting on your blood sugars, or making you put on weight, or making it difficult to lose weight, or sending up your cholesterol. This is very important to know what is happening at the cellular level. Okay, breakfast. I want to also emphasize this because people for breakfast here in Barbados, I find when I speak to patients, persons may be having things like bread and oats. And I noticed that here in Barbados, we call everything that is warm tea. Every beverage that is warm, we call tea. So hot chocolate is tea is tea, oats is tea. The problem with oats, or the difference between oats and actual tea, is that while a tea bag is in the water, we call that tea, there are no calories in there. The oats can't be tea. The oats are oats, and the oats obviously are starchy. So when you have a warm mug of oats, that is starch. And then you still eat bread with it, that is more starch. So what I find some people do is they combine starches at meal times. They may have plantain and eggs, and then they still have some bread with it. The plantain is starch, the bread is starch. So oftentimes at breakfast time, we have this habit of combining starches. And the more starches you add, the more your blood sugars are going to increase. So again, looking at your starches and just choosing one rather than trying to have so many different starches at breakfast or for Sunday lunch. The other thing is smoothies. I get this a lot. So persons, they will blend their smoothie, make a nice smoothie, but then it's too much. And when you ask them what they've added to their smoothie, they start to list off the fruits. I put in pineapple, and I put in mango, and I put in banana. And they start talking and say, oh yeah, I remember putting grapes, and I did have a few blueberries I add to that. Oh, and a few raisins. And I'm thinking to myself, but raisins are sweet. You just added a whole lot of sweet fruit, and still you have raisins. You just told me you added like 6 fruit to your smoothie. Now, the amount of fruit that you added to the smoothie, most of us would not sit and eat all of that fruit in a bowl at one sitting. But when it comes to drinking, because drinking happens so easily, it's nice, it's sweet, it's a beverage, it goes down a lot easier than if you have to sit and chew all that fruit. So the amount of fruit that we would sit and have, that we put in that smoothie, we wouldn't necessarily sit down and eat that amount of fruit all at once. That would probably serve us several days. So the issue I have with smoothies is that means we add too many fruits to these smoothies. They're all loaded in sugar, and we sit down and drink that smoothie. It could be 16 ounces of smoothie. And we think that we have done a good thing, but really and truly, it was too much. All right, so you just need about 6 ounces of a smoothie. That's all you need, which is not even a full 8-ounce glass. So sometimes we're consuming too much fruit or too much fruit in smoothies. All right, so choose about a cup of fruit, add a little water if necessary, and blend that up to make your smoothie. You don't need all those various fruits because most of the times we can't even say how much fruit we added to the smoothie. We just know we added certain fruits, but we can't say how much. All right, the other thing is regularly having natural juices that are high in added sugars. Now, notice that I have bolded regularly and the added sugar part. So these juices are usually under the guise of being natural juices. And while fruits are used, yes, I appreciate, persons also have a lot of added sugar. If you ask some of the persons who make these juices how much sugar is in there in that bottle, they can't tell you because they normally make maybe a bucket or a jug of juice and then they pour into the individual bottles. And oftentimes these natural juices have a lot of added sugar. If you take tamarind, for example, tamarind is quite acidic. Or you take something like passion fruit, which doesn't have much sugar, which is quite acidic. But then you drink the juice and the juice is nice and sweet. What do you think made it sweet? right? So oftentimes these natural juices have plenty of added sugar. So you want to be careful of how regular you're having them, okay? Very, very important. The other thing is the use of honey, the regular use of honey to cut back on sugar intake. Another practice that some persons have. So I'm not knocking honey. I'm not saying honey is a bad thing. I'm just saying that gram for gram, let me explain it this way. Gram for gram, honey has less sugar than the actual table sugar. So if you are accustomed to using 2 teaspoons of sugar and you decided now to replace it with 2 teaspoons of sugar, chances are you'll be getting less sugar in your 2 teaspoons of honey rather than using the 2 teaspoons of sugar. But because the honey is not as sweet as the sugar, persons may add 3 teaspoons, for example, to get the same sweetness under the belief that, the honey is better for me, so I can use more. But if you use too much honey, that too can elevate your blood sugars. So I'm not saying don't use honey, but you still have to be wise with the amount of honey you're using. And are you adding it to every single thing? Because that can also have an impact on your blood sugars. So these are just some of the practices as it relates to carbohydrates, whether they're the starchy foods or the sweet things in our diet. Now let's look at the fats. Excuse me. So it is important to highlight here that fats can be healthy or unhealthy. The healthy fats are on the left side of the table. These are the unsaturated and the polyunsaturated. I'm not going to get into these major terms, but just know that these are your healthy fats. These are the ones where you get your omega-3s. So we have things like avocado and nuts, nut butters, and seeds. So important to use your linseeds when you can. If you are making certain baked goods at home, put in your sesame seeds and pumpkin seeds and so on. Oily fish. A lot of us have moved away from things like sardine and mackerel, all right? But they are oily, and these omega-3s are wonderful for heart health, wonderful for joint health, wonderful for controlling hormone levels if you're a woman and you're having issues with hormones. So oily fish are so important to health. Vegetable oils as well. The problem with them is when we kind of heat them too much and we always frying. So again, using things in excess. And also olives and the Jamaican ackee, they also have nice, healthy fats. So we need fats, but we just want to choose more of the healthy types. The unhealthy fat will be like the fat you get on meat and on chicken, cream cheese and cheese itself, butter, margarine, mayonnaise, salad dressings. If you want to use a little vinaigrette, that's fine because most of them usually have olive oil. So then that's a bit better for you. Ice cream, some cereals, snacks, and baked goods. Now, let me point out here that the cereals, the snacks, and the baked goods have more of what we call trans fat. And I think it's really important for me to highlight this because a lot of us eat a lot of packaged snacks, a lot of baked goods, and a lot of cereals. Now, we may be looking in the ingredients list for the word trans or the words trans fat, and you may not see it in the ingredients list. So you think, oh, this is fine. This doesn't have trans fat. But trans fat is a very dangerous fat. It is made. Most trans fat doesn't occur naturally in food. It is usually made and it is added to certain ingredients like the same cereals and baked goods to increase shelf life, to get a desired outcome in terms of the product and a look, and to create glaze on your products. So they have that glaze or that shine. And these trans fats are associated with a lot of heart health or detriments to heart health, I should say. Trans fats are when we take oils, vegetable oils, and they convert them to a solid form. So what they do is they hydrogenate it. So then when you're looking in your ingredients list for trans fat, you want to identify the words hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated. So once you're able to identify the words hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, then you know that your item has trans fat in it. Okay. And then coconut. So coconut, I put here right in the center of the two groups because coconut has some saturated fat in it, which is not always a good type of fat. But what research has showed in recent years is that the type of saturated fat that coconut has is so easily digested by the body. So you can use your jelly or your grated coconut. These fats are a lot easily digested by the body. The coconut oil is a lot more easily digested by the body. So I put it right in the center because it's not fully unsaturated. It's not fully saturated, but it's a good type of fat you can use. All right, so what are the common food habits that lead to high fat intake? Now, it's important to note that these habits can contribute to weight gain. Remember, we said that fat is condensed in calories, so you don't need a lot of fat. It can lead to increased cholesterol. It can lead then to also heart disease. Now, let me just say here that cholesterol is not a bad thing in itself. There are different types of cholesterol. So when you go for a cholesterol reading, you may see HDL and LDL. The HDL is what we call the good cholesterol, and that's important for good heart health. Now, our livers, everybody's liver makes cholesterol, so we need cholesterol. The problem comes when we eat foods then that are, again, high in what we looked at earlier, the trans fats and the saturated fats and cholesterol itself. That increases the cholesterol circulating in the bloodstream. So when you go to get your blood test done, then, oh dear, your cholesterol levels are high because the liver's already making it, and then you're consuming foods that are high in certain fats. If there's too much cholesterol floating around your blood, it's more likely that it's going to stick on the inside of your arteries. And that builds up over time. You get a blocked artery, and that can cause a heart attack. So one of the things I find many patients can do, as I'm speaking to people, I notice that they're combining high fat foods in one meal. It's kind of similar to the carbohydrates, where you have many carbohydrates in one meal. Some people do this. And a good example is some people will buy macaroni pie, which is high in cheese, which is loaded with fat. And they may have fried chicken or fried fish with it, which is fried or cooked in a bunch of oil. And then they also have something like coleslaw or potato salad, which has the mayonnaise or macaroni salad. So what you now have is a meal that has so much fat. So you're now moving from having little fat or too little fat to having too much fat. So you want to now begin to look at what constitutes your meals. If you know that you really, really want the macaroni pie, then you're going to need to go with something like steamed vegetables or tossed salad, which have no fat. Or have the chicken baked or have the fish grilled. So you're cutting back on fat. Try not to have too many things on the plate that are high in fat. Okay? And likewise, if you really know, I really had a piece of fried fish in a long time, try not then to go for macaroni pie with the fried fish because you're really going to be loading your body with too much fat. Another practice is having several high fat foods once in a week. I get this a lot. So persons come to me for nutrition counseling for high cholesterol. And they will say to me, but I don't understand why my cholesterol will be high. I mean, okay, when I ask them what they've eaten, what they usually eat, they'll say, well, I eat pork on Sunday because time immemorial, my family loves to have pork. It's a tradition, and I really ain't giving up the pork, so I have pork on Sunday, which is high in fat. And then they'll say, oh, you know what? I have sauce on Saturdays. I really love my sauce. So I have sauce on Saturdays. And then they'll say, oh, so as the conversation goes on, they're adding something else that they're having. They're only having it once a week. It could be cheese for breakfast, or it could be macaroni pie during the week, or it could be fried fish and chips on Friday nights or Saturday nights. So by the time they're finished the conversation, they have had several things in 1 week, even though they're only having each of those things once in the week. And so I always say to them, look at your diet in its entirety. Don't look at the fact that I just had only this one thing once a week, but you might have had several things high in fat in that entire week. By the time you fried this thing and you had the sauce and you had the pork and you had the luncheon meat and you had the cheese, all the body knows is that, he or she gave me something high in fat every day, and that's not going to help your cholesterol. All right, so be careful of what food you're eating throughout the week. Also, replacing regular cheese with vegetarian cheese, and I wanted to painstakingly explain this term vegetarian cheese. Now, while some cheeses can be made from soy, and it should say that on the package, most of these vegetarian cheeses are not vegetarian in the term that we think. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure what people really think vegetarian cheese is or what it's made from. But vegetarian cheese, oftentimes, especially as it relates to a particular brand of cheese we buy here called Anchor cheese, and we buy the vegetarian form, it is that persons who are against cruelty to animals will buy this vegetarian cheese. And let me explain this, because Cheese obviously is made from milk. You don't have to harm a cow to get milk. You just squeeze and the milk comes. But in order to make cheese, because the milk has to be curdled, you need an enzyme that comes from the stomach of the cow to curdle the milk. It is called rennin. Now, in order to get the rennin from the stomach of the cow, you have to kill the cow to get the enzyme from its stomach. So persons who are against cruelty to animals and don't like to see animals butchered in this way will become vegetarian for this reason, because the rennin that makes the vegetarian cheese, you don't have to kill the cow to get it. That rennin is synthetic. It is made. So that person now would eat vegetarian cheese because they know, well, you know what? This rennin is not rennin from a cow. They didn't have to endanger the cow's life to get it. But the vegetarian cheese comes from the same milk. It has the same amount of salt. It has the same amount of fat and cholesterol. It is not made from some unknown mysterious plant. It is the same milk that you're making this vegetarian cheese from. So when you think that you are buying vegetarian cheese and it's a healthier alternative, it is not. And it's just a marketing strategy many people are not aware of. Always important to be an informed consumer. The other thing persons do is that they replace plain butter with garlic spread because they think it's healthier. It's a healthy alternative because it has garlic in it. It is the same butter. You haven't removed the butter. You haven't removed the fat. You just add in some garlic or garlic flavor to the spread or to the butter. The butter is still there. So it's no less buttery or no less fatty. All that fat is still going in. So even with garlic spread, you want to use it sparingly, the same way you're encouraged to use butter sparingly. Fried foods, often using healthier oils. This is another practice some people have. Oh, I'm using coconut oil or olive oil, so I can fry every day because this coconut oil is better for me. When the coconut oil is consumed so heavily, that can lead to weight gain. So you want to be still careful. The idea, as we said, oils are condensed with calories, so you want to limit your fats and your oils. You can use coconut oil and olive oil, but you don't want to be frying with it all the time. Limit your frying. That is essentially what I'm saying. Try not to fry too often. So we looked at carbohydrates. We looked at fats. I know I said a lot. And we're kind of winding down a bit. We're going to look now at the salt or the sodium. Let me say here that, because we hear the terms used interchangeably, salt and sodium. So salt, as we know it, table salt and other types of salt are made of two major minerals, sodium and chloride. So sodium chloride is salt, right? The chloride is not the problem, it's the sodium part. So oftentimes you may not necessarily have salt added to something, but sodium in one of the ingredients may be causing problems as well. So it's salt or sodium, that can be the issue. On the left side of the table, we have a list of foods that are always high in salt, really always high in salt. So bacon, ham, burgers, even if the bacon or the ham is turkey based, it is still loaded with salt, or chicken based, still loaded with salt. Burgers, nuggets, luncheon meat, spam, corned beef, hot dogs, sausages, salami, and all of those cured meats loaded with salt because salt is what helps to cure them. Cheese, salt fish, salt meat. All right, salted condiments. So all of your bouillon cubes and your Maggi cubes, OXO cubes, your sauces. So soy sauce, and some people have a habit of the food is finished, it's cooked, it's on the table, and we're still pouring more salty sauces over the food. So you really want to be careful with some of these practices, and you will be surprised that just making these small changes, you would notice that, wait a minute, my blood pressure is coming down very well, right? So looking at the sauces you're using, whether it is buffalo sauce, barbecue sauce, all these sauces have quite a bit of salt. Also, you can get these condiments that are powdered. So these powdered herbs that have salt in them. You want to read the ingredients list and maybe choose some that don't have salt. Also, salted or dry roasted nuts, you're guaranteed to have quite a lot of salt in them. Crisps, so your chips and corn curls and all those packaged salty snacks. And then on the right side of the table, we have foods that can be high in salt. Not all the time, but it's just nice to be aware of these. So pasta sauce, tomato ketchup, canned soups, pizza, ready meals. The ready meals are already prepared, so the salt is in there. You can't get it out. Biscuits and crackers, breads, bagels, and pita bread, breakfast cereals and cookies. And let me stop here because sometimes because the breakfast cereals and the cookies are so high in sugar, they're so sugar laden that we can't taste the salt because the sugar is masking the salt. You'd be surprised that when you read some of your breakfast cereals, the amount of salt that they have in. And as a general note, if you look at the nutrition facts label and the serving size of the particular breakfast cereal has more than 140 milligrams or mgs in that of sodium in that serving size, it is considered high. So I'll repeat that. If you look at your nutrition facts label and it says, okay, the serving size of the cereal is 1 cup, and that 1 cup serving has more than 140 mg in it, then it is high in sodium. If it has less than 140, then you're okay. But the question then would be, how much are you eating? That serving size may be a cup, but you may eat 2 cups. So then you still end up with more than the 140, depending on how much you eat. All right. And then some of the effervescent supplements and painkillers that we can use by nature have sodium in them. So I know some of us use a lot of painkillers, or we may be using a lot of the effervescent vitamin C's or some of these other supplements. And with, regular use, these may, I'm not saying they do, but they may be contributing to a high salt intake. So what are some of the common food habits that lead to high salt intake? So we looked at carbohydrates and fats, and now we're looking at salt or sodium. So the following habits can contribute to high blood pressure, which leads to stroke, heart attack, and kidney disease. Now, I want to pause here by saying, again, looking back at what is happening at the cellular level. Now, when you go to a doctor because you have accumulation of fluid in your ankles or high blood pressure, it is important to know, again, what is happening at the cellular level and ask myself, is there something I'm adding to my diet or I'm eating that is contributing to my hypertension or my fluid retention? And the reason why I ask this is because when we consume too much salt, what happens is that salt flows through the blood like everything else, every other nutrient. The blood is taking all these nutrients around the body. If there's too much salt in the body will absorb water from other body parts, other tissues, and from the intestines. And that increases the volume of the blood because now the blood has more water in it to kind of dilute the saltiness of the blood. And most people don't know this. So now you increase volume in blood, it expands the blood vessels and it puts pressure on the blood vessels. And that is one of the contributing factors to high blood pressure, because if pressure increases in the blood vessels or the arteries, it's going to increase your blood pressure. Your blood pressure reading is going to be elevated. Again, if you're consuming too much salt, the body holds on to excess fluid, and you may get swelling in your ankles or your fingers. Whereas maybe just changing what you're eating, swapping out some of the salty things for things less salty, and drinking a little more water to help the kidneys dilute the excess salt may actually help you better control the fluid retention or the swelling or the high blood pressure. So again, looking at what is happening at the cellular level and seeing what can be done to improve the diet. So some people replace table salt with Himalayan sea salt or the kosher salt, which is marketed as a better salt. Now, these salts do have minerals, some additional minerals that your refined table salt will not have. So it is true that these salts do have additional minerals, which may be beneficial. But the thing about it is that because you're now using salt in such small amounts, those minerals may or may not be that beneficial because you're not using a lot of salt. All right. So the thing to note here is that all salt is going to impact blood pressure. Even though these salts have additional minerals, they still have sodium. They have more sodium than any other mineral. And so you may be thinking, well, I'm using my pink Himalayan salt and my sea salt. And while these may have additional nutrients, they also are loaded with sodium, and they will still impact your health basically in the same way as table salt. I will say, though, that I personally use sea salt only because, not that it is necessarily better, but I use it because it doesn't have the anti-caking agents that you will get in table salt. All right. So if you are using it because you want to reduce the preservatives that you may be getting in the sea salt, and you want to reduce exposure of your body to these preservatives, then that's fine. But if you're using it because you think, oh, it's going to help my blood pressures a whole lot better, it's going to impact blood pressure the same way. So you have to be asking yourself, why am I using these products? What is the benefit? All right. Also, not measuring salt when adding to the pot. So we throw in the salt, or we throw in the salted condiments, but we don't measure it to know how much salt we're already adding in. So then we end up putting too much salt in the food. So it's always nice to measure the salt out. Also, not using salt in cooking. So maybe you'll say, I don't use salt in cooking. But then I ask them about how you flavor the food. I use like Maggi cubes, and I use this and I use that. So by the time they tell me to use ketchup and butter and Maggi cubes and soy sauce, all these things have salt. So the food is just as saltier because we've now added so many condiments. And while condiments, yes, can add flavor, still remember that they also have salt. So just choose one of them and stick to that one, rather than spending money buying all these different condiments to flavor up the food. You can use, if you're looking for flavor, it's best to use a lot of fresh or dried herbs that are unsalted. And then this little salt in your salted condiment, that one condiment, will just help to enhance the flavor of the herbs that are already in the food. Eating several high salted foods in one day. So I'm speaking to patients, sometimes they've had burger for breakfast. They've had chips for lunch, maybe chips and fish for lunch. The chips are salted, and they may have pizza for dinner. All these things are highly salted. So again, being conscious of your meal choices. If I have had something that is salty already for breakfast, should I now look at things that have less salt during the course of the day, rather than loading my body with all this salt? And the daily limit of salt per day is 1 teaspoon. Sometimes some of the foods that we have can have almost as much as 1 teaspoon of salt in just one thing that we may be eating. So the idea is that we will not really know when we've gone to the 1 teaspoon limit. So the idea is just to limit the amount of salt in each of the foods that we're consuming. And if we can do that, those small changes will go a long way for our health. And lastly, here it says read nutrition facts labels to choose foods that are low in sodium. So if you're accustomed to buying a particular brand of a product, look and see, is there another brand I could buy that may have a little less salt in it? Again, these small swaps and changes can go a long way, especially if this particular product is one that you use on a regular basis. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with some tips to help you eat a nutrient-rich diet, because at the end of the day, you still want to be able to be practical with your food choices and ensuring that you're giving your cells all that they need in order to function well, to manage disease, to avoid disease, and so that you can really live your best life with this body that God has given to us. Because we know that when we are sick, the mind can be very willing. We have a desire to do the thing, but the body's just not carrying us along. And so the first thing is eat foods from the 6 Caribbean food groups every day. So it means that when you're planning your meals every day, you want to get in staples. That's the first food group. And most of us are getting in too much. So we have this one covered. We also want to get in foods from animals. And most of us are eating too much food from animals anyhow. All right. We want to get in legumes. I find that legumes and nuts are often missing from the diet every day. So if you don't feel like eating some kind of pea or bean, you can eat nuts. All right. Unsalted nuts, of course. You also want to get in fruits every day, vegetables every day, as well as fats and oils, which most of us are already getting in. So let's look specifically now at adding fruits and vegetables to the meals daily. So fruits, I find, tend to be more practical to have with breakfast, and the vegetables you can have with lunch and dinner, because nobody boils soup and puts grapes in it. You would tend to put like carrots and pumpkin and put your veggies in there. So it's a lot more practical to have a salad or steamed veg with your food, or even incorporate the vegetables into the meal. So something like vegetable rice, or doing a pie and putting vegetables in it. Or if you're going to mash ground provision, you're creaming your ground provision, mash it with pumpkin in it to get in those extra fiber and nutrients. If you're going to do soup, loads of vegetables in your soup. If you're going to do chow mein, lots of vegetables in your chow mein, not just to give it color, but to really add that good nutrition, the vitamins, minerals, and fiber that the body needs. So fruits can come as a snack. Remember, you don't want to overload with your fruit. So you can have fruit for snack or fruit with breakfast, and the vegetables can come with lunch and dinner. But as much as possible, try to add fruits and vegetables every day to your meals. Thirdly, choose to eat smaller portions of staples. So we now know what the staples food groups are, right? The ground provisions, the rice, the pasta, bread, plantains, cornmeal, green bananas, oat flakes, barley, sago, cream of wheat, all those breakfast cereals. Those are our staples. So you don't want to just fill up on only them. You want to control the portion size. And oftentimes I encourage persons to control their portion sizes by folding their fists and looking at the size of your fist and getting your staples to be just about the size of your fist or even a little bit more, but not overdoing on the staples, okay? Especially if you know you're not very active or you know you're diabetic. Control those staples, and then the rest of the plate can be a nice piece of lean meat or fish and load the plate with some vegetables. Also, trim the fat off the meat and the skin and remove the skin from the chicken or the turkey. All right, so by removing some of the fat, then it means you can enjoy your meat without having to worry so much about, the guilt of having all that fat on the meat. So it's okay to have some meat, but try not to have, large chunks of meat and with all that fat on it. And then don't remove the fat and the skin and then go back and fry it because you're adding back the fat. Right, so try and bake and boil and so on instead. 5, replace some or all of the meat in your dishes with some kind of pea or bean. So you're doing soup, you can make a pea soup sometimes instead of having chicken or fish. So you can have meatless dishes where the protein can come from just meat alone. And sometimes I find people are a bit apprehensive or unsure of preparing how to prepare your peas and beans because they're not sure how to flavor it. It's not going to taste like chicken or fish or pork, and they're not sure what to do. So what I encourage people to do is add a lot of fresh herbs, your chives, your garlic, your marjoram, even I find some like cumin. So cumin or jeera seeds, you can add, and I find that gives your peas, really brings out the flavor in your peas and beans. Sometimes I do curried lentils, or I might do this rich kidney beans pasta, like how you would do spaghetti bolognese or mincemeat in a pasta sauce. I would, rather than using mincemeat, I use kidney beans. So you can have these meatless dishes where you just use peas as the protein, or you can half the meat. So, everything these days is going up. So now it finds that the same amount of money is not going to purchase the same amount of meat. So what you can do is you half the amount of meat you're going to put in. So you use half meat, half peas. So if you're going to do beef stew, half beef, half kidney beans. So then your meat can last a little longer. If you were going to do curry chicken, half chicken, half chickpeas, right? You could try lentil burgers instead of beef burgers all the time. All right. So looking at ways, sometimes rather than doing, we typically would do shepherd's pie where the mixed meat is in the center. So I really flavor up my lentils and make them rich, and I put them in the center of my potato. And I have that as a pie. Rather than using minced meat, I use lentils. So finding ways to add legumes, which are more cost effective and also will still give you that protein and less of the fat. So as I was saying earlier, when it comes to your meats and your meals, even things like plantains, we like to fry these foods a lot. We like to fry our fish. We can bake, we can boil, we can steam, we can even grill sometimes rather than always frying, because the idea is to get away from so much fat. All right, we don't want to over consume the fat. And 7, use more fresh herbs. So I alluded to this, more fresh herbs, unsalted seasonings, and less flavored cubes, sauces, and seasonings. So one that I enjoy using, I find really gives things a nice flavor, is Italian herbs or salt-free seasoning. They don't have the salt. One of the things I like to encourage persons is that, or remind them, is that salt gives saltiness. Salt gives saltiness, it doesn't give flavor. These various herbs, now when we add them, give the flavor, and then the salt helps to just enhance flavor. But salt does not give flavor. If all you did was just throw salt in your food and nothing else, your food wouldn't really have any flavor. You would just be able to taste the saltiness. So by adding your various fresh herbs, you're getting the potent flavors, because marjoram has a different flavor from chives, and chives has a different flavor from garlic, and garlic has a different flavor from dill. So by the time you put those together and then you add just a little bit of salt, it now enhances the flavors of the herbs that you already have in there. So the herbs can be fresh or they can be powdered or dried, but try not to put too much salt with them. And lastly, eat more whole, natural foods and fewer of the ultra processed and refined foods. So the idea is that you want to have foods more in their natural form. Ground provisions are more in a natural form. Brown rice is more in its natural form. Fruits are in their natural form. Peas and beans are in their natural form, especially if you use them dried. You soak them overnight and then it takes less time to boil them rather than buying the ones that are ultra processed in a can. Right. So the idea is to get away from more of the, so much of the ultra processed foods, the foods that are loaded with salt, fat, sugar, and other preservatives that we're not even sure how these preservatives are harming our bodies. You know, what they're doing to our bodies, what symptoms manifest because of all these processed foods. And really begin to be more intentional about how we are eating. Begin to look at food as a substance that now needs to be nutrient rich so that my cells are nourished, so that leads to healthy organs, and these organs can function in tandem with each other in my particular system in my body, because organs come together to make systems or to create systems, and these systems then function to make sure that our bodies are functioning well. So the idea is more natural foods and less of these processed foods. And I hope that you would have learned something from my presentation tonight. I don't know if there are any other questions, Reverend Ford, but thank you very much to the audience.
And thank you so much, Sister Leanda. What a session we have had. Amen. We've had one question that I doubt very much we will be able to answer
Right,
on in this forum. Yes. So I will ask for persons, if you need to get hold of Leandro, you can email us at Blaze Apostolic Ministry International at gmail.com, and we would be happy to pass that information on to Sister Leanda for follow up. What a time we've had this evening, and indeed, the whole area of nutrition is a very wide one, and
right.
therefore we had to, in our pre-planning, we had to decide which areas that we were going to focus on, and I believe, being led by the Spirit of God, we were able to cover those critical areas that we wanted to emphasize. Amen. I just wanted to mention before we wrap up finally, anytime you begin, let's say, to reduce the salt in your food, not eliminate it completely, but
Right.
anytime you begin to do that, and then you have some food that is cooked with one of those Maggie cubes and so on,
You
you really
notice the
begin
difference.
to you really begin to understand that they're nothing more than salt cubes that you
Right.
used to think before used to flavor your food so well, because that is what your palate was accustomed to. But
Mm-hmm.
anytime you begin to go on the other side, and you had to use one of those, it would be shocking to people who use them on a day-to-day basis. But I thank you very much, Leanda, for really taking the time to explain the areas of carbohydrates and fats and water and so on and so forth. because I do believe, as I said in my preamble when we opened, that there are a lot of people out there who are perishing for a lack of knowledge. And many
That's right.
times they are doing things that they believe are healthy, without any solid knowledge. And as a result of that, sometimes and I believe at some point in time, who knows, we all have been guilty of the same thing.
Yeah.
And uh, and therefore the important thing now is for persons to be able to really and truly tap into proper information. And in areas where there are no experts, then you need to gravitate towards somebody who would be able to give you proper direction, and so on. So we here at the Blaze, we want to thank you. I could almost see that there is some second session somewhere down the road in terms of what we would look at it at that time. But indeed, this area of nutrition is going to be critical, especially in the time and season in which we live, when persons are trying their best to cut and contrive, and so on. Um, but there are other areas which we will explore at some point in time, that I myself might have some knowledge in. I am not a registered anything, and therefore I would never begin to go there myself. But the question that we had, and I would ask, the person to touch bases with us. So if you can give some direction in
Hmm.
in a private sense, then that would be applicable. But I'll show it on the screen there, and it is basically what is a good vitamin for a female over 60. And we, as our disclaimer said, we are not so much trying to release certain diagnostic information or treatments and stuff like that. And therefore, please touch bases with us, and we will pass that information on to Sister Leanda Hurdle, and she can do some follow up where that is concerned. So it was in our intention as well to keep our broadcast at just an hour and 30 minutes, and we were able to achieve that this evening. And indeed, we want to thank those who have been with us. We want to thank those who will watch this as it live on the internet should Jesus tarry. And please do. You may be a member of a church, you may be a member of a club, you may be your workplace, whatever the case may be, and you want to begin to sensitize those who you come into contact with, in terms of nutrition, and getting their health and so on in order. Please do reach out to us. And Miss Leanda Hurdle would be uh, one of the ideal persons for you to get to come in and to share with you. Amen. So, here at the Blaze Apostolic, we want to thank you again this evening, from the bottom of our hearts, for being with us. And we look forward to having you on in future broadcasts. On Sunday evening and the next two Sunday evenings, we're heading back into our Faith Booster broadcast. And stay tuned to our Blaze to see who we will have on over the next two Sundays. And I know it is going to be a tremendous blessing to the body of Christ, as indeed this session was this evening, not only to the body of Christ, but to the public at large, this particular session. And the next two Sunday evenings, likewise, a powerhouse time awaits you all. So keep in tune with the Blaze, and you will see that being advertised over the next few days. So God bless you all. Thank you again, Leanda, and may
You, it
God
was my
continue.
pleasure.
May God continue to bless you all in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
God bless.